Good evening. The temperature in Minneapolis is 4 degrees, but the political friction is hot enough to melt steel. As reported by the AP and confirmed by the Pentagon, 1,500 active-duty soldiers from the Army's 11th Airborne Division, Arctic warfare specialists, are on standby for deployment to Minnesota. The trigger? Ongoing unrest following the ICE shooting of Renee Good and the massive Operation Metro Surge. We are staring down the barrel of the Insurrection Act. Is this a restoration of order or the death of state sovereignty?
It is the restoration of sanity, Thomas. Let's look at the facts. We have federal agents pinned down in the Bishop Henry Whipple building. We have a governor, Tim Walz, who has effectively told federal law enforcement they are on their own. When a state executive refuses to enforce the law, or worse, obstructs it, the president has not just a right, but a duty to step in. As noted on Fox News, local leadership has abdicated its responsibility. This isn't an invasion. It's a rescue mission.
A rescue mission? Reagan, you're talking about deploying war-fighting troops against American citizens on American soil. This is a clear escalation designed to provoke, not protect. CNN reported that the unrest was largely peaceful until federal agents began using aggressive tactics. You don't send the 11th Airborne to de-escalate a protest. You send them to crush dissent. This is the weaponization of the military to enforce a political agenda against the governor the president simply dislikes.
Political agenda? Enforcing immigration law is a federal mandate, Kaylee. It's not optional. Secretary Noem made it clear on Face the Nation. There is no fixed end date because there is no limit on the danger these peaceful zones are harboring. When you have violent resistance to federal officers, that is the literal definition of insurrection.
Violent resistance? An American citizen, Renee Good, is dead, shot in her car. Mother Jones and multiple other outlets have highlighted that she was a legal observer, not a combatant. The violence is coming from a militarized force acting with impunity. If Trump invokes the Insurrection Act here, he is setting a precedent that any city which disagrees with his policy can be occupied. That is not federalism. That is a police state.
Let's pause for a moment. I hear the frustration in both of your voices, and frankly, it's valid. People are grieving, and the streets are dangerous. No one denies that. But if we stay locked in this cycle of who threw the first stone, we are going to miss the history being written right in front of us. We are so focused on the noise of the protest that we're ignoring the structural earthquake happening beneath our feet. This isn't just about police jurisdiction anymore. Consider the specific assets being moved. As the BBC and AP have noted, the 1,500 troops on standby are from the 11th Airborne Division, Arctic warfare specialists based in Alaska. They aren't just soldiers. They are trained specifically for the freezing conditions Minneapolis is facing right now. This isn't a hasty reaction to a riot, Reagan. It is a tactical calculation. We are moving from a debate about law and order to a constitutional stress test. Can the executive branch bypass a governor to deploy a specialized warfighting unit into an American city? That is the question we should be terrified to answer.
And that calculation is exactly why it's terrifying, Thomas. It proves premeditation. The Posse Comitatus Act exists to prevent exactly this, the military acting as a domestic police force. If the president can override a governor because he claims local police aren't doing enough, then state lines mean nothing. We are watching the executive branch dissolve the checks and balances that keep the military out of our politics.
Checks and balances work both ways, Kaylee. The Constitution's Supremacy Clause means federal law trumps state feelings. If Minnesota becomes a no-go zone for federal agents, the union is already broken. The president isn't dissolving checks and balances. He is enforcing the most basic contract of the Republic, that federal law applies everywhere, from Miami to Minneapolis. You can't have a state government actively facilitating the obstruction of federal justice.
But at what cost, Reagan? The BBC reported that even the mere threat of this deployment has local officials calling it an occupation. When the cure for disorder looks exactly like the tyranny the founders feared, do we save the law by destroying the peace?
Peace is the presence of justice, Kaylee, not just the absence of tension. If the local police won't secure the streets, the 11th Airborne will.
That's not justice, Reagan. That's subjugation. And history tells us that when soldiers march on their own citizens, the peace that follows is usually silent and temporary.
We are standing on a razor's edge tonight. The standby orders for the 11th Airborne aren't just a logistical update. They represent a profound crossing of the Rubicon for American federalism. When a president prepares to bypass a governor by deploying specialized Arctic warfighting units into a domestic setting, we have to ask what kind of peace we are actually pursuing. The law is a necessary anchor, but a democracy cannot be held together by tactical calculation alone. Whether you see these soldiers as a rescue force or an occupying one depends entirely on your partisan lens, and that is the true tragedy here. Our military is designed to defend the nation from external threats, not to serve as the final arbiter of our own internal failures. If we cannot resolve our disputes through the courts and common trust, we risk turning our own cities into specialized theaters of operation. We must find a way to lower the temperature before the very frost we're preparing for hardens into something we can no longer break. Subscribe, and good night.